Welcome to the Pawtalk Central channel, where every story about dogs holds a kind of magic. Have you ever thought that the dog who entered your life wasn't just by chance? That it didn't just come home with you, or through adoption, or by chance one ordinary day, but was sent to the right place at the right time when your heart needed something humans couldn't give? It may sound unbelievable, but sometimes the most sacred gifts don't arrive with thunder and glory. They arrive with a warm breath, a gentle lick on your hand, or a pair of expressive eyes full of love. Remember the moment when you were tired, when the whole world seemed to turn its back on you. No one asked how you were. No one really understood you. And then, it came. Quietly, it lay its head on your knee. The gaze said what 1,000 words could not. I'm here. You're not alone. People call it instinct, but maybe it's a mission. Perhaps somewhere, among billions of souls, an invisible hand chose to send to you a small being that knows how to love through silence, how to heal by simply showing up, and knows faithfulness to the end. Today, we'll step beyond chance, to look deeper into the spiritual truth behind the friendship between humans and dogs. Why do they show up just when we're weakest? Why can they reach places human speech cannot? And what hides behind that look of loyalty that makes millions believe dogs are not just pets, they are gifts from God? Because this isn't just a story about friendship. It's a story about an invisible bond, the tie between the human heart and the unconditional love God wants us to feel through the form of a four-legged friend with a heart that loves in silence. Section 1. The Guardian. By the fire. Long before humans knew the word pet, before there were houses, leashes, or ceramic bowls, there were long nights and a fire's glow. In that darkness, humans huddled around embers, trembling at the wind and the distant cry of wild beasts, and at the edge of the light, there were other eyes watching, not the gaze of a predator, but that of silent night watchers. They had no names, no masters. They simply stood there, between darkness and light, between instinct and faith, as though waiting for a signal to approach. And then, somehow it happened. A look, a piece of meat thrown, a warm breath meeting another, and the first invisible bond was formed. No contract, no binding, just a recognition. I am no longer alone. From that night on, dogs entered the human world, not as servants, but as guardians. They lay beside the fire, heard the human heartbeat during sleep, protected in silence. When morning came, they rose and walked alongside, hunted together, shared life together. Ancient people didn't need words to understand. These creatures didn't just live next to humans, they lived for humans. The Egyptians carved dogs on tomb walls, believing they guided souls to peaceful places. The Greeks placed them at the side of a goddess, guarding the gate between life and death. In remote tribes, dogs were not just companions, they were dream guides, defined as symbols of faithful souls. Perhaps long ago, humans already knew something we're gradually forgetting today, that dogs aren't only born to live with us, but to remind us of who we are. We've replaced the fire with screens, the forest with concrete walls, yet one thing hasn't changed. They still wait at the door, still quietly lie by our bed, still hear the sadness we try to hide. It seems across thousands of years, they never forgot their role, the guardian of the human soul. And maybe that's the first reason why God sent them. Not to serve, but to remind us that in a world full of noise and fear, there still exists a warm fire, nestled in the heart of the one always waiting for us to come home. Nishpatam Section 2. Healing in Silence. Hospitals always carry a distinct smell, antiseptic, white linens, and a cold, hard-to-name scent, the smell of fear and waiting. In that place, there are rooms so silent you can hear ventilators, clocks ticking, and sometimes the sigh of someone clinging to hope. Then a door quietly opens, the soft taps of little paws on the floor. A dog enters, no prescription, no comforting words. It just walks to the nearest bed, lays its head on the hand of someone trembling, and settles down. No words spoken, yet the whole room seems to change color. A patient smiles after many days of silence. An old person slowly strokes the soft fur. A child undergoing chemotherapy looks at it and then laughs. Science calls this animal-assisted therapy. Studies from Harvard University and the National Institutes of Health (NIH) show when humans touch dogs, their bodies release oxytocin, the love hormone, which helps lower blood pressure, reduce anxiety, and slow the heartbeat. But perhaps the thing science can't measure is the moment when someone on the verge of giving up opens their eyes again, just because they felt a warm presence beside them. Dogs don't ask, "How are you?" They don't distinguish between doctor or patient or care how long you'll live. They just lie there, breathe with you, silently, yet they speak more than any words. In their breath there is a rhythm of peace. In their eyes there is acceptance. And in their presence there's a miracle no drug can replace, the feeling that you are still loved. There were long nights when therapy dogs lay quietly at the foot of dying patients, not moving an inch. Some stayed 3 days beside their late owners. Some returned to the same hospital every morning just to wait for the person who once petted them. People may call this instinct, but perhaps it's a kind of intuition, a silent covenant between human soul and the soul of loyalty. Maybe God sent these beings not only to keep our bodies warm, but to keep our spirits warm during the coldest dark periods. They don't heal with words, they heal with presence. They don't use rationale, they use love. And in this noisy world, perhaps that is the language of heaven, the silence that knows how to love. Because sometimes what redeems a person is not a hand pulling them up, it's a peaceful breath beside them, whispering, "It's okay, I'm here with you." Section 3. The lesson from soft fur. After a long day, you open the door and step into your home. Nobody asks questions, nobody judges. There's only the sound of claws clicking, a tail wagging furiously, and eyes shining with joy. You're home, that's enough. Whether you're sad or happy, successful or defeated, in its world you are still someone worthy of love. No conditions, no reasons, just love. Dogs cannot speak, yet every day they teach us a lesson. They teach us how to live in the present, to forgive before being asked, to love without fear of being hurt. When we chase success, they only need a stroke. When we fear judgment, they only need us to smile. And when we feel lonely, they only need to lie still beside us to remind us we were never truly alone. People say, "My dog saved me," but maybe they didn't pull us out of the fire. They taught us how to breathe within the fire. That is their teaching. Love wholeheartedly, live fully, and forgive unconditionally. And perhaps that is also why God sent them, to remind us that true love doesn't need to be perfect, it just needs to be present. Section 4. When heaven sends help. Sometimes miracles don't come with thunder, but with the soft sound of little paws on the floor. Have you ever noticed that your dog appeared just when you were weakest? When you'd lost someone, when you felt you had nowhere to turn, and then it walked in, gently, as if it knew the places where your heart was cracking. People call that coincidence, but maybe it was arrangement, as if someone above knew that one day you would fall, and so sent a small being to wait for you. It doesn't ask, doesn't counsel, doesn't try to fix things. It just sits beside you, watches you cry, breathes with you, as if bearing part of your pain that you couldn't speak. And when you begin to calm down, you realize there are angels without wings, but with fur, 4 paws, and a heart that knows how to love in silence. So, if one day you feel life is cold, look down at your feet. Maybe heaven already sent help, you just haven't noticed yet. Chapter. Section 5. The silent companion in grief. After loss, the world often becomes too quiet. Not peaceful, it's the kind of silence that weighs heavily on the heart. Relatives, friends, they all go back to their lives, and you are left with an emptiness that no one can fill. And then, in a little corner of the room, there's still one being that stays. It doesn't say words of comfort, doesn't ask questions. It just lies quietly, its eyes looking at you with an understanding rarely found in humans. Dogs don't try to make you forget your pain. They just sit beside you as if saying, "You don't have to get over this right now. I will stay with you." They stay awake with you during long nights, lie at your bedfoot when you cry, and every now and then touch your hand softly, as if a tiny reminder, you are still loved. No words, no plan, just presence, steadfast, warm, unconditional. And sometimes that very simplicity saves us from nights that seemed impossible to survive. People call it loyalty, but maybe it's more than that. It's a kind of sacred love where a small soul helps carry part of the loneliness the human heart cannot bear. Maybe that's why God sent them, not to erase the sorrow, but to walk through it with us. Because sometimes, the only thing keeping a person in life is a small breath lying quietly beside them. Chapter 6. Section 6. The Friend of Soldiers. There are wars that don't end when the gunfire stops. Many soldiers return home, but their souls remain trapped on the battlefield, where explosions, smoke, and painful memories still chase them in sleep. For them, peace isn't peace, it's something lost. Then one day, a dog walks into their life. No rank, no mission, it just is. Eyes gentle, ears listening, a heart that never judges. At first, it's just a silent companion, but gradually the soldier begins to sleep more soundly. Nightmares ease. A smile returns. Not because of pills, but because of the warmth from that little being lying on his chest each time a panic attack hit. Some studies show veterans with dogs undergo significant reductions in PTSD symptoms and negative thoughts. But people in the trenches say something simpler. My dog saved me more than any doctor ever did. Because while humans attempt healing with talk, dogs heal with presence. They don't need to understand trauma, they just need to stay. Maybe in those souls who faced darkness, God sent a small light in the form of a dog. Not to forget war, but to remember there is still something worth living for. Love, loyalty, and compassion. Section 7. Each step is a prayer. When people grow old, the world seems to shrink. Several steps slower, the house becomes too quiet, and some mornings there's no reason to get up. But then, in a corner of the room, there is a familiar sound. The leash lightly rattles, little paws tap the floor, a warm, patient look as though saying, "Come on, you're up now." And you stand. At first, just a few steps to the mailbox. Then gradually, a loop around the small block. With each outing, the breath becomes lighter, the heartbeat slows, and something inside begins to live again. Doctors can measure heart rate, count steps, but they cannot measure the moment you realize it was that little being who kept you holding on to life. No grand gesture needed, just a leash, a bowl of breakfast, an expectant look, and you again have a reason to smile, to walk, to exist. Many people think they're caring for a dog, but actually, the dog is quietly caring for their soul. It teaches you that every step, even the smallest, is a thank you lifted to the sky, because you're still here and someone is still waiting. So next time you walk your dog, remember, you're not just walking, you're praying with your steps. Section 8. The Last Friend. In life, we all reach a point when we have to say goodbye. Friends drift away, relatives stay busy, promises fade. The house once full of laughter becomes quiet. And in that space of emptiness, there is still one little being unwilling to leave. It still lies in the familiar spot, still watches your every step. Whether you succeed or fail, no matter how you change, with it, you are still the one. It doesn't love the strong version of you. It loves the weak, the tired, the fallen. People often say, as loyal as a dog, but that loyalty isn't just waiting. It's love that never expires. Love that doesn't need to be returned, doesn't need to be understood, is simply given. When the world turns its back, it still lies there quietly, as though affirming that love still exists, no matter how fragile. And sometimes, that silence alone is enough to mend the cracks in the human heart. Maybe God sent them to remind us that even when people change, there is still a love that will never abandon us, a love shaped like gentle eyes and a heart that knows how to stay. Section 9. A sacred symbol. Long before humans called them pets, dogs were seen as guardians between two worlds. The Egyptians carved them into tomb walls, believing they guided souls through darkness to a place of peace. In Greek mythology, dogs stood beside the goddess Hecate, guardian at the crossroads of life and death. In ancient Celtic lands, they were called the souls of loyalty, protectors of the lost. Whether in religion or myth, they always appear in the same position, just beside the boundary of the sacred. Not at the center, not at the highest place, but close by, silent, waiting, observing. Perhaps that is why when we look into a dog's eyes, we often feel something indescribable. As though it knows more than it shows, as though in that gaze there's a spark from somewhere humans have forgotten, a piece of heaven still left on earth. When it sits beside us in sad times, when it looks out at nothing we can see, maybe it's hearing something sacred our ears cannot touch. Perhaps God does not always speak through thunder or miracles. Sometimes He chooses a gentler way, sending a being who loves in silence and reminding us that He is still here through the gaze of loyal eyes. Section 10. The Ritual of Presence. Every morning, when you wake, there is a small ritual waiting. The claws click softly on the floor, the head nudges your hand, the eyes light up as though saying, "Good morning, here we are together again." Dogs live by routine: eat, walk, bask in sun, then curl up in a familiar corner. But to them, it's not repetition, it's gratitude. They don't tire because every day is a new gift. When you pour water, they look at you as if it's magic. When you fill their bowl, they rejoice as though it's the first time they've eaten. They teach us that sometimes the most sacred doesn't live in a church or in prayer. It lives in the small things repeated each day when we are truly present. In a fast-paced world, dogs are mirrors of presence. They don't think of tomorrow, don't regret yesterday. They just exist, fully, peacefully, and complete. Perhaps God sent them to teach us that lesson. Each meal is a thank you. Each touch is a prayer. And every moment together, that is a miracle. Section 11. The One Who Hears the Soul. There are things we've never spoken. Fears hidden in laughter, sadness buried in, "I'm fine." Emptiness no one touches, only sighs echoing in an empty room. Then a quiet being sits close. It doesn't ask, it's not curious. It just lies down beside you, ears slightly lowered, eyes looking deep as though it understands what you haven't yet uttered. Dogs don't hear with ears. They hear with the heart. They sense the sadness in your breath, see the fatigue in your steps, and instead of trying to fix you, they simply stay, fully, unconditionally. In a noisy world, sometimes what we need isn't someone to advise, but someone who listens without judgment. And dogs are like that. They are the quiet friend who hears even the things we dare not speak. Perhaps God created their ears not just to hear calls, but to hear the human soul. Not the sound, but the heartbeat, the emptiness, the thing unsaid. And maybe that is why, on days when we are at our weakest, we reach for them before we reach for prayer. Because there we know we will be heard, understood, and loved without saying anything at all. Section 12. From Puppy to Guardian Angel. Every story begins with a small start, and perhaps the friendship between you and your dog is just that. A round pair of eyes, a clumsy little body, a gentle lick on your hand. You think you're caring for it, but in fact, from that moment, it began watching you. It learned your voice, learned how you breathe, learned when you're sad though you don't say it. It grows with you, through moves, birthdays, lonely nights, the times you cry in the dark. And before long, it's not just a pet, but a part of your memories, a witness to your life. Then one day you realize it's growing old. The steps slow, the eyes dim, the breath heavier. You know time has less left, but you're still not ready to say goodbye. Then, in the quietest moment, it gently lays its head on your hand, as though saying, "It's time for you to move on. I have done my job." People say dogs don't fear death, because they understand more than anyone that love never disappears. It only changes form. When you look around the now empty house, hear the familiar footsteps only in memory, you suddenly realize they never really left. They just moved into another presence, quiet, gentle, but still by your side, in every breath of life. Maybe every dog who enters our life carries a mission. Teach us to love, teach us to forgive, teach us to be present, and finally, teach us how to let go with love, not fear. So when you see another dog on the street, eyes meeting yours, and your heart stirs a little, don't turn away. It might not be a new beginning, but a continuation of an old love. A little angel returning to remind you that true love never ends. From the first fire in the ancient night to the warm home of today, dogs have walked with humans for thousands of years. They don't speak a word, yet somehow they speak the deepest language. The language of love and presence. They show up when we're joyful, when we've lost, when we're broken. They hear things we cannot say, and stay when everyone else leaves. And sometimes, just with one look, they make us believe we are still loved, we are still seen, we still matter, even when the world has forgotten our name. Maybe that is the message God wants to send, that His love isn't only in prayer, but in every small step, every warm breath, every silent touch of a loyal soul. So next time you hear soft paws behind you, or feel a familiar warmth beside you, pause a moment. Don't take it for granted. Look deeper, because maybe you are being reminded of something sacred, that God's love is still here in the form of a dog. Now, I'd like to hear your story. What has your dog taught you? Share in the comments, because maybe your small story will be the spark that helps someone else find their way through the darkness. And if this video touched you, stay with Pawtalk Central, because the journey to discover the messengers of love has only just begun.